Thank you, Eric, and I hope Megan is writing a book. I mean, is she amazing? So another round of applause for Megan. I have to say, I am so glad to take a break from Washington, where everyone is very, very scared of vaginas. And to come to a tech conference where, well, we'll see. For all of us, the last months, the last 8 months in particular, but really the last many years have been a whirlwind. And as Eric said, thankfully, Planned Parenthood, the country's largest reproductive and sexual health education and care organization, is still standing. So, available to all 24/7 online at over 600 health centers across the country and at town halls, marches, and rallies near you. Now, last week's failed Trump Care vote was a major victory for Planned Parenthood and basically anyone who doesn't want to go bankrupt paying for health care. But unfortunately, while we won the battle, there is still a lot more of the war to fight, and that's because Mike Pence, who actually kind of invented defunding of Planned Parenthood when he was in the Congress, is, of course, now the vice president. And these are the people that the administration has turned to dismantle health care policy in this country. And I would say nobody thinks Obamacare is perfect, but wiping it out like the Starks at the Red Wedding is really not the way to make policy, right? And that's really what we see. And when these are the only people who sit at the table to really pick up on a theme that Megan hit on, it's no wonder that every single version of Trump Care was literally deadly to women and was going to have a terribly negative impact on maternal mortality, on all kinds of outcomes for everyone, but women were really the target of every single one of those bills. Now, you may already be asking, why is this lady talking about politics and healthcare? Did she wander in the wrong auditorium? Because this is a VR conference. And the reason I wanted to start there is that a huge part, to quote somebody we all know, of why women's reproductive care is an obsession of Washington politicians is that it is rooted in stigma and shame around sex, sexuality, and yes, abortion, particularly aimed at women. And that's where you come in. You are the wizards of a new world. And I'm here to challenge you to make that world, the world you build, better, not worse, than the one girls and women and gay people and people of color have to live in now. Starting with cooties on the playground, to being scared of us sluts at the party, to hearing nonsense from the coach cars of the world, politicians are emboldened to believe they can and should punish women for having a body and for using it. I mean, it's 2017, we're all aware that women have periods, but I still see women sneak the tampon up the sleeve from the meeting before they'll walk out the door. And at Planned Parenthood, we've actually been trying for an entire century to beat back this stigma. When our founder, Margaret Sanger, and some of her badass friends started Planned Parenthood 100 years ago, they were thrown in jail for distributing information. Of course, once they got to their cells, they started teaching the other inmates about birth control, so they kind of got their revenge, but they really were total badasses. But they didn't go to jail for the idea of birth control. They went to jail for championing the idea that a woman's body is her own, to share with a partner or a baby or no one as she decides. And of course, 100 years later, I'm really starting to worry that a bunch of us are, sorry, I keep bashing that thing, that a bunch of us are gonna have to go to jail for this apparently still controversial idea. But technology, the technology that you're working on, has opened up new fronts and given us new tools to give people the information and the care that they need, tools that Margaret Sanger could never have imagined. And at Planned Parenthood, we use technology in lots of ways. First, to leapfrog the barriers that so many people have when they're trying to get care or information. Second, to get people involved in the fight. And third, to go after that stigma that surrounds sexual and reproductive health, and which is what fuels the need for the first two things that we have to do. So on all these fronts, advances in technology are changing the game for Planned Parenthood. Many people don't know that last year, 68 million people visited Planned Parenthood online to get that kind of information that Margaret Sanger was thrown in jail for delivering. However, now it's a little more accurate. And it's also available, of course, 24/7 and for free. We now have a new period and birth control tracking app called Spot On that in its first year has been downloaded over 1 million times. And we've just started rolling out birth control and STI appointments via secure video chat right on your phone. Now, no, you don't get to use the phone the way you're thinking, but give us a year. I really do love that one of the first patients on that platform was a woman in rural Alaska. She lived literally 500 miles from the closest health center. So she got on her phone, she had a video appointment with our team in Seattle, and a few days later, a float plane delivered her birth control. And we are still working on the drone IUD. No. So this is all about meeting people where they are, whether that where is online, or it's in a rural village in Alaska, or hopefully soon in virtual reality. And that's why we're especially excited about partnering with you all, with tech companies, to tap into their platforms, into your platforms. We're working with Tumblr, Snapchat, Reddit. You'll hear some more about the technology platform folks that we're working with. And you all are already working with the audience who needs and wants the information that we have. I'd just like to say we are always looking for new partners and places to plug in. We want to know where we can fit in your world, and I hope that you'll follow up with me and let me know. Technology is also letting us get a lot more people involved in the fight to protect care and information and our rights. When I started at Planned Parenthood about 6 years ago, we had roughly 3 million supporters. Today, we're closing in on 11 million supporters, and they are more engaged than ever. And I know many of you are among them. You know, we can mobilize people to take action seconds now after Congress introduces a bad bill or the president tweets something off the wall, like that would ever happen. But by using these new text technologies in particular, we've been able to get 60 people on a pop-up phone bank to deliver thousands of calls into Nevada, for example, during this fight, or 6,000 or 60,000 into the streets of Minneapolis or Miami, sometimes in minutes, and it's just making all the difference in the world. So where does VR fit into all this? Frankly, in every single bit of it. Imagine virtual health centers, honest, accurate, interesting sex ed. That could be very interesting. Virtual protests and marches, safe social spaces to help young people figure out who they are, and especially leveraging the empathy-building power that only VR seems to have proven it can deliver. For that last reason, we teamed up with some fabulous filmmakers. Many of you have heard of them or worked with them. Nani De La Pena of Emblematic Group, Brad Lichtenstein and Jeff Fitzsimmons of Custom Reality Services. And we created a virtual reality experience called Across the Line to put people in the shoes of our patients who too often face significant abuse as they seek care. Our question was, could we use VR to change hearts and minds and get folks to take action? It's one of the few immersive experiences that actually combines 360 video scenes and CGI. And it uses real audio and video recorded at real protests, along with scripted scenes built to mirror them that allow people to actually experience what it's like to try to get care at some of our health centers. Here's a short clip from the 360 section.
I wonder if does he know where to go?
You guys okay?
Yeah, we're wondering if you know where we should go for the clinic.
So Across the Line takes you through this woman's whole experience. That's when she first drives up. And then in the CGI section, your virtual self walks through that wall of protesters as they hurl insults your way. Just a sample of what they say. You're a little whore. Start closing your legs. God's going to destroy you in a lake of fire. And my personal favorite, which has become the Across the Line official tagline, wicked Jezebel feminist. Which somehow they didn't realize we would think was a compliment, but whatever. Anyway, after that uplifting description, I want you to know that you can actually experience Across the Line while you're here today on the Vive in the Star Foundation Hall till 5 o'clock. And again, I would love to hear from you if you do get a chance to go through the experience and give us your feedback. We've now taken it to state capitals, college campuses, law enforcement leaders, and conferences and festivals in 34 states. And anyone can experience it at home without the kind of full walkthrough feeling of it on a Gear VR or Google Cardboard. We're really proud of the film, not just because it's won some nice awards, which it has, but because it's doing what we set out to do. In one state capital, we invited folks to come, and we included people who actually weren't very friendly to Planned Parenthood and women's health. And kind of incredibly, one of them showed up, one of the state legislators. He watched Across the Line, and when he took off that headset, he was angry. Our volunteer who was running the program that day was pretty nervous, and she didn't know, was he mad at her? Was he mad at us for showing abortion in kind of as the safe legal service that it is? You know, what was going on? So she just asked him, she said, "What did you think?" His response, "Those people," meaning the protesters outside the clinic, "should not be using the Lord's name like that. There is no reason for them to talk like that." This is a guy with, again, a long record of voting against Planned Parenthood and women's health issues, but he saw these protesters for the first time as the bullies that they are. And for many men, I think there is just no other way than VR for them to come that close to the experience women have in our shaming culture. I'm not fooling myself that one trip through VR is going to change his next vote, but I do believe he understands the world a little differently because of it. And this wasn't an isolated incident. We partnered with researchers to understand just how viewing the film could affect the outlook of people with more negative views toward abortion. Across the board, the preliminary research is showing that people who watch Across the Line more strongly disapprove of harassment outside of clinics than those who have not seen it. And even better, after watching the film, more people said they could support a woman seeking an abortion even if they didn't agree with her decision. That's kind of a miracle. I had originally conceived of the film when we first started talking about it in these kind of liberal conservative construct, but the most standout thing to me has actually been what's happening on that gender dimension. Women frequently come out of the experience shaken because it's often too close to their real experience, or at a minimum, shaking their head and saying, "That's awful, but I'm not at all surprised." Men, they come out of across the line wanting to punch someone. It's really true. They've literally never felt what it's like to be yelled at like that. Most people aren't bigger than they are. Most people don't assume it's safe to comment on men's choices. And sex and sexuality, men are praised for it, while, as you heard, women are basically called prostitutes. During a demonstration in St. Paul, another great example, a longtime clinic escort watched across the line. This is a big, tall guy. He's in his 40s, spends every Saturday walking Planned Parenthood patients past protesters. You would think if anyone was prepared for this situation, it would be him. But when he took off the headset, he was in tears. He said he had become so numb to the abuse patients endure that he forgot they just can't tune it out. Moving just 2 feet to his right from the shoes of an escort to the shoes of a patient was a revelation. Even though he had been standing right there, the yelling had not been at him. If that's what you all can do with this technology, if in 7 minutes you can move people those 2 feet to a place where they can see it's not about politics, it's about people, you absolutely are going to change the world. So games and films, especially those in virtual reality, in my view, risk taking the privilege that men have as they move in the world and putting it on steroids. Taking the message, you're big, fast, strong, and sometimes mean, and we will make you bigger, faster, stronger, meaner. Look, this is not a dig at games or fun or men. I like them all. But it is a challenge for you to use your awesome talent and your amazing companies and your super fast processors for good. The opportunity is clearly there. To use VR and gaming to show the powerful and the privileged what it means to be in the shoes of the marginalized or stigmatized, to let girls and boys experience girls as strong and as smart and as courageous as boys, to experience equal, because girls are gamers too. I know I have triplet girls, and they're part of your audience. One area where I am absolutely obsessed with VR is around sex education. What if instead of this, sex education looked like this? And no, it's not that kind of sex ed. That's a totally different talk. Ask me back next year. But what if young people really could use VR to actually practice what it means to give and receive consent? What if they could take a tour of their reproductive system or someone else's? What if we could come up with a game where the level up is a more effective form of birth control? I've nicknamed it Stop the Sperm. But what if a young person could experience, and what if a young person could experience what it's like to live in a different or as a different gender or no gender? Gaming and VR makes all of this possible in ways none of us could have imagined even 5 years ago. I can see this kind of VR in our classrooms, in health center waiting rooms, and embedded into the already wonderful spaces that you're creating and where young people are going to be flocking as this industry and this platform take off. We are in an all-out battle for the future, not just of Planned Parenthood, but the entire future of sexual and reproductive health in this country. We've made incredible progress already. Right now, we're at a 30-year low for unintended pregnancy. We're at the lowest rate of teen pregnancy ever, and the abortion rate is the lowest that it has been since the passage of Roe v. Wade. Yeah. So wouldn't it be great if we stopped playing political games with people's health and started playing virtual reality games that actually improve it? I think it would, and I think you're the folks to do it. You can help young people live healthy, shame-free lives in new and amazing spaces where they can have fun, they can ask questions, and they can get those answers without fear of judgment or ridicule. In 5 years, I'm hoping that I can come back here and we'll be talking a lot less about A Handmaid's Tale and way more about the Wonder Women and Supermen that this platform, that your technology, that your stories, that your work will have created. So we thank you for your partnership. We really believe that technology is the way over, under, around all of the problems and all of the limitations that are keeping people from the care and information and activism that we need. And we love your partnership as we move forward. Thank you so much. I think Eric's coming back out. Hi, Eric.
All right, is this thing, okay. So we have time for 3 quick questions for Dawn. If anyone would like to jump up to a microphone and share a quick question.
Question or thought? Even a comment, we'd love to hear. Oh, there's somebody.
Oh, sure. You told the qualitative story about the reaction of the legislator. What prompted you to make the investment in this film, and how do you determine the ROI on it?
How we got started with it is we've been attending Sundance as part of our partnership with many storytellers and filmmakers over the last years. And I was very lucky to see Nani de la Peña's piece on Syria. And we had been seeing an uptick in the number of protesters and also less enforcement of and backing of laws to basically protect women who are getting care. And I got to talking with Nani's team, and we said, there's just no other way. It's not little nuns praying. It's really mean people yelling horrible things and basically threatening women with violence and damnation, a lot of damnation. But so we just got going on that, and then Brad and Jeff jumped in with their piece of it, which was the 360. And so it just started coming together, and in the scheme of VR projects, it was actually relatively inexpensive, and of course those guys all donated so much. So we just had this feeling that it was going to be both the best way to help people understand what was going on there, and also something that we needed to be thinking about as a platform for all of the work that we wanted to do and where VR was going. So it was also just a great opportunity to learn and experiment. The ROI for us has been in this stage proving out through the research, not just those kind of one-offs, but actually doing some research with groups that study stigma to actually see, is it having an impact on people who see it? Now, our next goal is to obviously get to a better and bigger distribution and give more people access to it so that we can actually kind of start to really change some minds. One of the things we've considered is, without freaking out people, how might we take it in some of our door-to-door canvassing that we do? How could you use something right there on the steps if you were saying, now would you support a law that would protect people in these circumstances? So that kind of thing. So we're right at that moment to go from the early research into basically trying to get it in a lot more places. Thanks.
Another question?
Yeah, okay, awesome, over here. How can we prevent the sort of polarization that occurred during the last presidential election, specifically with filter bubbles in the news feed, from also affecting a platform as effective and immersive as VR?
Yeah, I'm hoping you're the answer. Because I think it is a huge risk in our culture. Obviously, we see it all the time, although I think it is an important statistic for people to know that when you actually ask people in America, the news makes it seem like there's some kind of 50-50 back and forth on an issue like reproductive health and abortion. when in reality, over 75% of people say they support Roe v. Wade, even people who, for themselves, very appropriately say, that's not a choice I would make. They don't want to constrain that choice for other people. And about the same number of people say they believe Planned Parenthood should be funded to do the preventive health services that have been, being bandied back and forth in this health care bill. But it is easy in the world that we live in to have one story over here and one story over here, and then the news media just likes to crash them together every once in a while to get some additional ratings, I think. So how we are going to be able to get people not to just select into, a worldview and then another worldview, I think it's a big challenge and one that you all are likely to face, and I hope are thinking about that now.
Awesome. And then
Great.
we'll do one last question up here.
Yes, hi. This is a follow-on to the ROI question. You talked about using it in terms of canvassing. Have you thought yet about how you use it in terms of fundraising for the organization and what that might look like?
Yeah, we have used it some to, I think, basically help donors and particularly some foundations and things understand what the potential of the technology is. Just, there just isn't that much evidence. So much that happens for nonprofits is we are often the people who get the technology third hand, 5 years after it's been any good. Everybody else has moved on and somebody's going to give you their stuff, which, is okay, but it would be great if actually organizations like Planned Parenthood, and what we were trying to do here was actually get in and be part of this as it's getting launched so that we can think right away about, again, what if all these amazing things we know and our content around sex ed could be taken by people like you. And I don't want to become a VR company, right? I'm not trying to myself make Planned Parenthood a VR company. I'm looking for what's the possibility of VR? How do we work with you to provide you the excellent content and you, the creatives and the technologists and the filmmakers, take that and do amazing things for young people, right? We'll never get to scale if you're waiting for me. So what we need to do is have all of you take this, reach out, say, hey, I'm in, I'd like to work on that. And then we see what we can do to support you, people we might introduce you to try to get the funding to do amazing projects. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. Thank you all very, very much.